Meet Piggly. He sells delicious cherry pies from his Longaberger Berry Basket. Welcome to Up All Night DIY. I'm Monica. Thanks for joining me. Today is round 2 of the Longaberger Basket Rescue, hosted by my buddies, Traci of Traci Vanover Design and Dawn of Shabby Meets Bling. This is where we refresh a Longaberger basket to update it and, for kicks. Let's get into it. Traci sent me this berry basket with the handle. I do like the basket as is, but decided to freshen up the appearance using some Jo Sonja whitewash gel. So I'm going to lightly brush it on. I want this to have a distressed look, but I still want to be able to see the original color beneath. You feel me? I'll cover the entire basket, including the handle, and I'm going to set it aside while we work on Piggly. I have 2 foam balls, a 2.3 and a 2.8 inch. I cut a flat spot on the bottom of the larger one so he won't roll about, and I've cut a larger flat spot on top. I cut a flat spot only on the bottom of the small ball, which will be his head, and we're going to stack them just like this to make up his body. You know the deal. I'll also be using Model Magic. Any clay will do. This is just my preferred clay at the moment. I grab a handful of the clay, I'll knead it to condition it, and then I'm going to roll it out nice and flat using my brayer. I'm going to wrap the clay around the ball, and I'm going to press it, to make sure it has really good contact. I'll tear away or cut away any excess, and I'll fill in the gaps. I roll it as I go, but once it's completely covered, I roll it around on my table to smooth it out as best I can. And I'm going to repeat the process with a smaller ball. These do not have to be perfectly smooth. If that's what you're into, okay. But for me, as long as they're relatively smooth, I'm good with that. I'll use a toothpick. I'll push it right in the center to connect the 2 balls. So I'm going to push it about halfway down, and then I'll put the head on top, just like this. Just slide it right on, and there we go. That's a good start, right? So now I'll roll out a log of clay. I'm going to use this to fill the gap between his head and neck. I'm just going to wrap this snake right into that gap, and I'll use my fingers to push it into place. And then I'm going to come in with a clay tool to smooth it out and to incorporate the new clay, the snake clay, with the clay on his head and body. You can use a paintbrush handle to smooth out the clay, incorporate it. That works as well too. To create his ears, I'm going to roll out a ball of clay. I don't know, maybe 1/2 inch big, I guess. Not really sure. I'm going to cut that in half, and I'm going to pinch both pieces into like a triangle shape, because these are going to be his ears, so we want, triangular piggy ears. And I'm going to use a clay tool to make a divot in the ear to make it concave. I broke the pointy ends off a toothpick, and I'm going to use these to anchor his ears to his head. So I'm just going to push them in where I think the ear should go. And then I'm going to slide the clay ear right over top of that toothpick. Oh, that's right. I want to use some tacky glue here too. So I'm just going to add a little tacky glue onto the clay on his head and over the toothpick a little bit too, just to make sure the clay doesn't go anywhere once the ear is in place. And I'm going to use my clay tool to kind of push the 2 clays together, the clay from his ear to the clay to his head, just to make sure that it's well stuck, and so it doesn't have such a defined line. We want that to be smooth and kind of look like one piece. I roll out another bowl of clay, which we're going to make his snout from, and I'm going to make this more oval in shape, so I'm just going to flatten it a little bit with the palm of my hand. I want it to have a little bit of thickness so it sticks out a wee bit. I'm going to check for size. I'll push another small piece of a toothpick where I want his nose to go to anchor his nose. And I'm going to add some of the glue around it as well, just like we did with the ears. Pop his nose right onto that toothpick and press to make sure that the clay of the nose is making contact with the clay on his face. Now I'm going to use a paintbrush handle to incorporate the clay from his nose to the clay on his face, just lightly going around the edges. To make his arms, I roll out a log of clay and I'm going to narrow both ends of the log so that they come to a kind of a point, but more rounded, and then we're going to cut this in half. I'll make some adjustments with my fingers to the bottom of his arms. Yep, there we go. Again, I'm going to push half toothpicks into his body where I want his arms to go. This arm is going to wrap around the front of his belly, so I'm just going to push that and shape it into place. I roll over it with my tool to smooth it out. And now I'm going to impress a wee line to make his hoof with my clay tool. Another toothpick on the other side. I'll slide this arm over top of the toothpick. This arm is going to be up in the air, and we'll incorporate it just like we did the other. Make the little indent for his hoof. Okay, cool. I roll another small ball, and I'm going to cut that in half. These will be his cheeks. They're almost perfectly cheek shaped once they're cut, so I'm just going to pop them right into place, pressing, making sure that, the clay has good contact. And I'm going to press in a wee dimple using my clay tool. I'll just go up from underneath his cheek and make that wee dimple. And I'll also use that tool to make his nostrils. He needs a little baker's hat. So I'm going to kind of roll out a really short log, and I'm just going to pinch the ends to make them pointy, like a wee baker's hat. Kind of looks like a boat, but those little paper hats that I'm talking about. You'll see. And I'm going to pop that on right between his ears. That'll stay. I don't need a toothpick or anything. It'll stay on there. I'll just press it down. Oh, look at his wee hat. He needs a bandana for his neck, so I flatten more clay. I'm going to cut out like a triangle shape with this square cutter. And with a circle cutter, I'm just going to take out a little bit at the top there. And we'll kind of shape that to look like a bandana. I think I want to put a little bit of a fold in there. So I'm just going to use my tool here and kind of make a wee bump. And I'll press that around his neck at the front. I roll a thin cane of clay. I'm going to use this as the ties to his bandana. I just thought it would be easier to do it this way. And I wrap it around his neck. I'm just going to flatten it down on the back. And then we'll incorporate it. And then we're going to make another one for the other side. I'll cross this one over the other one so that it looks like it's tied together. I roll out a tiny wee ball, which I'm going to pop over top of that piece in the back so that it looks like a knot on the back of the bandana. You know what I mean? Okay, now he's done. We're going to make his pies. So I rolled out another small ball, which I'm going to pinch into a triangle. I'm going to cut it off at the back and make it flat so that it looks like a slice of pie. To make the crust, I rolled out a really thin snake of clay, and I'm just going to add that across the back of the pie. I'll use my tool here to make little divots like the fluting on the crust of the pie. This is going to get attached to his hand right here. We're going to do that later though. Okay, next. He'll have 3 full pies, which I'm going to use bottle caps as the pie tins. I'm just going to roll out a ball of clay and I'll push it into the bottle cap so that it fills up the bottle cap and looks like a pie. And this pie will get trimmed too. So a thin snake of clay. I'm going to go right around the edge, come in with my tool and make the fluting. Just making little indents around the crust. And I'm going to come in and make a couple indents in the center of the pie too, like little slits. And I'm going to make 2 more of these. Okay, Piggly is going to sit in the center of this basket, but he needs to be up higher. So I've cut a few sheets of packing foam to fit inside the bottom of the basket. I'm just going to stack them up, one on top of the other, in the basket here. This will give him some lift. Okay, so I let Piggly dry overnight, and he is ready for paint. His face and arms are going to get 2 coats of Ceramcoat tawny. His hat and shirt are going to get 2 coats of Ceramcoat white. He's going to have short sleeves, so I'll paint these in white. I guess I could have left it without painting it white, but I wanted it to be bright white, and the clay isn't really bright white once it dries, so that's why I'm painting it. His bandana will get 2 coats of Ceramcoat watermelon, and again I'm going to outline it first, just because I find it easier to do the outline before filling it in. That's just, my thing. You do whatever suits you. And now I'll get this all filled in. Again, this is 2 coats of Ceramcoat watermelon, which is my favorite red. I'm going to add a red stripe around the side of his hat, both sides. I'm using a 000 detail brush for this. And just below that red stripe, I'm going to add an Americana Bluegrass Green stripe as well. I'm going to add some white dots to his bandana. This is just an end of a toothpick that I'm using to make the dots. And now we're going to add some Bluegrass Green dots as well. Pull that in so that his hat matches his scarf. He's very stylish. He'll get both the red and green stripes around his sleeves. I dot on his eyes with Ceramcoat Hippo. I'm dotting and then I'm kind of pulling down a wee bit to elongate them. See? Now I'll add white dots at the top of his eyes, but we're not done yet. He gets bluegrass irises. Again, just a wee dot. A smaller hippo dot for his pupils. And then we're going to let those dry. In the meantime, I'll pull out my floating medium and we'll do a little bit of shading. I'm going to prep my brush by dipping it into this clear gel here. That's the floating medium. So I'm going to get a good healthy coat on there. And then I'm going to side load with Sienna. Now I'm going to stroke this on my plate to load the brush with the paint and the medium. And what that does is it blends the two together and it'll give me a gradient of color. The darkest color will be at the very edge where I loaded the paint onto my brush, and it'll fade as it moves toward the middle of the brush. So it gives a nice shading effect. I'm going to go around the inside of his ears to just add a wee bit of color here. And now I'll shade his hooves, and I'm going to go around his arms where they meet his body. So I'm just going to do this anywhere I think there would be a natural shadow, or where I think, it would look good. I'm going to give him starter eyebrows with the raw sienna. I'm going to come back and go over them in Hippo Grey in a little bit, but this is kind of like a shading thing too. And I fill in his nostrils. I'm going to give him a cute wee smile. I really didn't realize how his nose would get in the way, so I'm sorry if you can't really see what I'm doing. But it's just a basic smile. And you know what? Let's give him a little bit of a chin under here. And we're going to give him some upper eyelids, and I think some lower eyelids too. So I'm just kind of making arches around his eyes to kind of infer an eyelid. And we'll give him a couple character lines besides his eyes as well. Now I'm going to float some shading around the base of his ear and around where his hat meets his head. And we'll go around his snout, because of course we need some color there. And we're going to go around his neckline, where his neck and his kerchief meet. Now I'm going to go over top of his eyebrows with the Hippo Grey to strengthen them a bit. And we'll add some just wee strokes to his nostrils, and then we'll go over his mouth as well. Now I'm going to come in and add a little coral to bring some pink into his snout, and we'll go over his cheeks with that as well. So what I wound up doing is just adding some of the coral everywhere where I use the raw sienna to bring in that pinkish color, that pinkish tone. And now I'm going to float his hat and his wee shirt with Tropic Bay Blue, just to bring a little more color into it, and to add a little extra something something. I'm going to use Bluegrass Green to shade his bandana. I did add white highlights to his eyes too. I also gave him Tropic Bay Blue buttons on the front of his shirt. Okay, so now that he's all painted, we'll paint the pies with Ceramcoat Maple Sugar Tan. So I'm just going to give each pie and the wee slice a complete coat, actually 2 coats of Maple Sugar Tan. To make them look like they've been baked, I'm going to dry brush a wee bit of Ceramcoat Golden Brown around the edges, and just really anywhere I think, it would look good. Now, I diffused this color, which I don't know, is pop pink, I think. I wind up going over it with watermelon anyway, but that's all beside the point. Anyway, I diffused the color, dipping my brush into the floating medium first, because it'll make your paint a little more translucent. This is kind of like the, the jelly that the cherries would be in a pie. You know what I mean? What is that? I don't know what that's called. And now I'm using the back of a paintbrush to dot in some cherries with watermelon, and I think I used primary red too. I'm just adding cherries on either side of this slice of pie. Okay, I actually used Americana Country Red for the other red. Adds a little depth. I use a cosmetic sponge to pounce on a layer of Mod Podge as a sealer to the pies and to Piggly. I'm going to add some seed beads as a cherry on the top of the slice, and each of the full pies will get 3 seed beads on the very top. So it looks like some of the cherries have spilled out of the pie. I just love adding little touches like that. I just think it's so cute. To create a wee table for his pies to go on, I have more of this packing foam, and I'm just going to wrap some gingham fabric around it. I'm going to glue it with 3-in-1 glue to the fabric, and then I'll kind of wrap it like a present. I wanted to do it like this because I want all of these pieces to be able to be used separately, so I'm not making this permanent in any way, shape, or form. This is much easier, just creating each element, and we're just going to add them to the basket when we're done. Well, you'll see. Okay, we're ready to assemble. So I have the foam sheets in the basket. This is to give Piggly some lift. He's going to go right in the center like this. And I've made a wee sign to hang on the front of the basket. Cherry pies, $2.49 each. Designed this in Photoshop to look like one of those retro grocery store signs. You feel me? So that's going to go right on the front there. We're going to add him. And I have some wooden blocks here. These will hold up his wee table. And again, I'm not gluing any of this in. I'm just sitting it all on the basket. So now his little table goes there. I'm going to take some more of this gingham fabric and I'm going to fill it in around him. So I removed the table. We'll add that after I get the fabric in because I think that'll be easier. So I'm just going to push this in and adjust it until I'm happy with it. Yeah, that looks good. Let's add the wood blocks, and we'll add the table on top of the wood blocks. I almost forgot that I want to glue this little slice of pie into his hand, so I'm using 3-in-1 glue for that. I love 3-in-1. It's very versatile, and it's got a really quick grab to it. So let's put the pie in his hand. We'll put the other pies on the table in front of him, and Piggly and his delicious cherry pies are done. And here's a final look at Piggly and his Longaberger cherry pie basket stand. That's a mouthful. I think he turned out really cute. It's the first time I ever made a pig. He's adorable. I want to thank Traci and Dawn for hosting and for inviting me along. So please be sure to check out their channels as well as the playlist, because Jackie Burns is also joining us for this collaboration. Please be sure to check the description box for all that information. You'll find it there, as well as a list of my supplies. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. Stay creative, my friends. Thanks for hanging with me. See you next time. Up all night with Monica.